Are we streaming now? I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this and trying to figure out. Okay, I guess we're streaming now. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Welcome to the first show for February. And what we want to do is just kind of, for those of you who just kind of wandered in, you might not know where you are, what's going on. This is a once a year event, a video a day. We call it February in honor of me. And this year's theme is self love. So, all the 23 guests that we have in the panel discussion will all be focusing on that theme. So, our first guest tonight is Mr. David Essel, and he says something really interesting that we'll be digging into this a little bit more as the interview moves forward. David says that 80% of relationships are unhealthy. His work and his book that we'll be talking about tonight will help to change these statistics, he says, starting right now. I was like, that was very intriguing. Just so you know, David has been a part of the world of personal growth and relationships for more than 40 years. His work as a counselor and master life coach has been verified by Psychology Today and Marriage.com. They both acknowledge David as one of the top relationship experts and counselors in the world. He is the author of 11 books, 4 of which have become #1 bestsellers, with the latest one being the subject of our talk tonight: Love and Relationship Secrets That Everyone Needs to Know. So let's welcome David to the show.
Hey there, Deborah.
What's up? I'm so excited that you're here.
I'm ready for you, baby.
Okay, well, let's get started with question number 1. Since only 20% of relationships are considered, quote, healthy, can you first define for us what a healthy relationship is?
Yeah, Deborah, it's a great question. You know, a healthy relationship is where individuals are matched mentally, psychologically, physically, emotionally, spiritually, like they've got it together. You know, it doesn't mean they don't have problems, but they have a union that is so deep and so beautiful that it doesn't really matter what's going on in the world. It's not going to shatter that relationship. You know, in counseling, as you mentioned, I've been doing this for 40 years now plus. You know, we tell people, here is your union. It's right here. You know, here's the union. Now, above that might be God, but right here is the union. And what we want people to realize is the union is the centerpiece of your family. If the relationship between mom and dad or boyfriend and girlfriend, if you're not married but you have children, isn't solid, isn't strong, then we're not going to be raising kids the way we want to. We're going to have kids that we have today. You know, and not to knock the kids of today, but let's be honest, as you mentioned earlier in my book, we prove 80% of relationships are unhealthy. So the healthy ones are the ones that are filled with zero addiction. Deborah, zero addiction. That's rare in the world of relationships. There's food addiction, nicotine, pot, alcohol, drugs, television, righteousness as an addiction. Social media as an addiction, except for Deborah's show. You can watch it 24/7. It's fine. Don't worry. Media in general, news, you know, so when we look at the 20%, you know, they're very grounded. They're very in the present moment. You know, one of the things I like to say about the 20%ers is that there is intimacy into their 90s. You know, like when I say intimacy, there's a kiss, there's holding of hands.
Aww.
You know, like that kind of intimacy. It doesn't stop because the kids move out of the house. It doesn't stop because the kids are a pain in the butt. It doesn't stop because you retire. It doesn't stop because, you know, my mom died a week ago today after an 11-month battle with dementia.
Oh.
She had been with my dad for 75 years. Married 71. They were together 75 years, Deborah. When
I can't even imagine. I can't even date anybody for 75 days.
No, I can do 7 days, and I think that's a healthy thing for me. I told my dad one day, I go, Dad, you took all of the commitment genes out of the rest of our family. Okay. You got them all with you and mom, and you ain't giving any of them up. But, you know, and I want to talk about my mom and dad for a minute, Deborah, can I?
Sure. Yeah, most definitely.
All right. So here's one of the couples that would go into the 20 percentile group. Now, here's something interesting. my mom and dad, coming from the era they were and the personality type that they are. My dad was an accountant. My mom was a stay-at-home mom until we were running low on money, and then she had to go to work. But the real interesting thing is they weren't overly affectionate. Like, I don't remember them holding hands much or hugging much or kissing much. I didn't see that. But I saw this amazing respect for each other. You know, for 11 months, my mom was in hospice at our home. My dad is just as sick as my mom. He's not sick mentally with dementia, but he's got so many things wrong with him. But with her pain of dementia for 11 months, every day, my dad would sit in the hospital bed that was in her bedroom, put in by hospice, and hold her hand for 11 months. They had a bond unbreakable. You know, I just returned late last night from the funeral this weekend, and I was with my dad and my brother and sister, but I really focused on my dad. You know, as a counselor, I wanted to see where he was. I wanted to do a temperature gauge. You know, I want to really get into his head, and I got into his head. And he said to me, you know, David, we can't control so many things in life, but if you have faith in God the way that your mother and I did, these experiences of losing your mother is one of the worst things, if not the worst thing I could ever imagine. I'm going to cry. I'm going to be lonely. I'm going to be sad. But the ultimate to me is your mother and I had a connection through God that cannot be broken. And that brings peace to my heart.
Wow.
Now, Deborah, that doesn't mean everyone has to have that kind of connection with God to have a great relationship, but that was one of their foundations. So when I work with couples, I always say, like, what are your commonalities? What are the things you love to do together? You know, like when my dad talks about what they did when they were dating, I didn't even know. My dad's a CPA. He's 5'5", 100 pounds. Okay. He was a huge dancer. I had no idea. My mom and dad would dance the weekends away at different places. And, you know, it was a different era, a different time. But, you know, they had bowling, believe it or not, as a common interest. You know, they had common interest outside of the family. And that's a
I think that's
crucial
important.
part.
A lot of people don't have that. Oh, they're saying in the chat room that they're sorry to hear about your loss. I want to pass those condolences on to you.
Beautiful. Thank you. I so appreciate it. You know, it was terrible. You know, I can't say that it wasn't painful. Losing my mom. I mean, my mom and I, oh my God, you know, I'm going to start crying right now because she is why I do what I do. You know, like, she was such an influence to me. I got sober because of my mom. I became a minister because of my mom. Everything in my life, you know, I adopted dogs my whole life because of my mom. I mean, I just can't talk enough about her, you know? She was
Well, let's
pure
give you an
love.
opportunity to share some of that knowledge that you gained that she inspired you to have.
Well, you know, like, let me give you a great example of my mom. 50 years ago, I was 10 years old. 50 years ago, living in an all-white neighborhood in Syracuse, New York. 50 years ago, my mom said to my dad, I want to bring a child from New York City through the Fresh Air Fund up to our house for the summer. And the Fresh Air Fund would find these children from tough places, neglected, and then they would find mini foster families for the summer. So my dad agreed. And here, now we're talking 50 years ago, Deborah, this is huge. She brings this beautiful black child, Michael, into our house, and immediately the neighborhood went crazy. An all-white neighborhood went crazy. My mom had so much faith. She was hurt. She was very hurt because of all the gossip and all the talk and people sneering. It was terrible. However, she calls her father and she says, Dad, and she's crying. She said, we brought this beautiful child up from New York, and the neighborhood is rejecting us and rejecting this child. And my grandfather said, I have a camp on a lake 45 minutes from you that you grew up in. Take this beautiful child, Michael, to the camp. Don't worry about what they're doing and saying. Take them up there for all summer long. And Deborah, we went up to the camp all summer, and the camp people loved Michael. They embraced him. Michael had never seen water. He had never gone fishing. He had never been in a lake. The kids that are 10 years old, Michael was 10 and I was 10, all the kids my age wanted to play with him. like he started out in the shell. Of course, you have to be scared as crap. I mean, you're thrown
Well,
into a
yeah,
white,
you got a whole neighborhood of people gunning for you.
yeah, and you're in a white family and you ain't never lived with a white family. You know, that's scary enough for a 10-year-old, right? And then all of a sudden, though, he blossomed at the camp. He loved all these kids. These kids loved him. We became great friends. Now, I don't know what's happened over the last 50 years, but see, you know, Deborah, when you're talking about love and the book we're talking about, Love and Relationship Secrets That Everyone Needs to Know, it's about acceptance, not just of your lover. It's about acceptance of everyone.
Right.
It's compassion, it's communication. You know, like I happen to be right, you know, on Friday, the day of the wake, 3 days ago, I was on Syracuse TV, one of the stations that I go on all the time when I go back home. And the very last thing I said in the interview is this: I know that there's a lot of people watching that did not have a mother like I did. I was very fortunate. My brother and sister were very fortunate, but not everyone is. And I want you to know, I'm sorry that you did not have this experience, and I love you. And that's how I ended the radio or the television interview, because I know that not everyone has had this kind of a background. And I also want to share this. The ultimate connection between my mom and I really occurred after I left the house. I was a tough kid. I was not easy. We battled constantly. But after I left the house, I turned around and saw over the years what an amazing mother I had, how she taught me how to be brave and loving and kind and welcome all people into your arms. You know, like homeless. She would stop. Oh my God, this is 50 years ago. This woman, she was a radical. You know, she was 4'9", 90 pounds, and she was a firehouse. And I love that type of person. And she's the one that made me who I am today. And my brother and
Well, let's
sister.
pull some of that knowledge out, David, and get talking to the people about your book.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the top 3 struggles, because this is something I was very interested in as I was reading through. The top 3 struggles that couples deal with that you feel destroy their relationships.
Well, number 1 is resentments, without a doubt. I mean, forget it. If you have resentments going forward in your relationship, you're screwed. I don't care if they happened 2 months ago. I don't care if they happened 20 years ago. If you don't clear up your resentments within your relationship is going nowhere. And why is that? Because the resentments they're not going anywhere but getting bigger. You know, the longer you submerge a resentment, I don't care how tiny it is or how big it is. You know, like let's say someone has an affair. All right, well, after an affair, you go get help. If the person who cheated is willing to say, I made a mistake and I'll do whatever it takes to save the marriage, you keep the person in your life. But here's something else that'll surprise a lot of people, Deborah. In 40 years, I've never met a couple where there was an affair where it was only the cheater's fault. Never, ever in 40 years. I've worked with so many couples that have had affairs. It's never the cheater's fault alone. It might be a 60-40 split. It might be a 49-51 split. It might be an 80-20 split. And I'll give you a great example. There was a couple I worked with 17 years ago where the guy had an affair. He was caught and he didn't know if he wanted to be with his wife and 2 children or his girlfriend. So his wife comes to me and says, hey, David, you know, my family is telling me divorce him, get rid of him. Anyone who cheats on you and your kids, you got to get rid of. And she said, my friends are telling me the same thing. And I said, well, before you make a decision of divorce, let's do the work. So we worked together. Deborah, within 4 weeks, and we give all this written exercises, within 4 weeks, she comes in with tears in her eyes. I had given her an exercise the week before, and I said, I want you to write down your role in your husband's affair. She said, I went home for the first 3 days. I was so pissed at you because I knew I had no role until day 4 and day 5 and day 6. And she came in with a list of 6 to 7 things that was her responsibility, not to cause the affair, but that helped lead to it. Number 1, she shut him down sexually for 6 months, would not listen to anything. He had done something that pissed her off. And this is why I'm talking about resentments. She held a resentment, and every time he wanted to make love, she said no. And he'd say, why? And she'd say, because you did this. Well, guess what? If you're going to hold your partner out of your bed, and you're not going to work on your resentments, don't be surprised when an affair happens. And I'm not endorsing affairs. I'm just saying, hey, there's two sides to every story, and there's two sides to every affair. Here's the greatest thing in the world, Deborah. The 5th week when she came in, she said, David, you know what? I am not listening to my family and my friends anymore. After I did the exercise and saw my role, there's only one thing I want you to help me to do. And I said, what's that? And she said, I want my husband back. And I want to work my butt off to tell him that he's not the only one that caused this problem, and I want to owe up to him. The next week, her husband comes in. He says, I haven't talked to my wife, but she did send me a text saying that she owned some of the responsibility. He said, and I have one goal, and I'm wondering if you can help me. I said, what's that? He said, I've made a decision to save my marriage. Would you walk down that path with me? It took 1 year, Deborah, and now they've been back together for years, and they're doing phenomenal. So when we talk about what's one of the major killers of relationships, hey, look into the back of your head. Look into the front of your head. Are you holding anything that you're upset with, frustrated with, that you haven't worked through? Now's the time to do it.
Okay.
If we don't, we're going to have an 80 percentile relationship, meaning a dysfunctional relationship. You know, another thing that causes dysfunctional relationships is codependency.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about codependency because I think that that's one of the issues that a lot of women have when we talk about why they won't leave a situation that, as you know, that's not healthy. They bend over backwards and do all kinds of things to stay in that relationship and keep that guy around. And I was wondering how much of that is due to their family of origin and some of the things that you brought up earlier on when you were talking about Michael.
Yeah, great question. I mean, first of all, codependency is all family of origin issued. It starts between the age of 0 and 18. And here's the tricky thing. And in the book, we go through and tell you there's 2,000 spokes of codependency. Codependency is not just an easy definition. On the one side, you have the enabler, right? And we'll say women and men right now. We'll say the woman's an enabler. There's a lot of men that are extremely codependent too, but we'll just keep it stereotypically easy to follow. So the woman wants her husband to be happy, or boyfriend, or whatever it is. And so whatever he says goes. Whatever he wants to do, she says, okay, as long as you're happy, you know, blah, 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 right? So she is the enabler to him to do whatever he wants to do. And she'll back down and she won't rock the boat, but she'll hold resentments. And that's one of the keys we want to talk about. Now, on the other side of codependency is the controller. So we have some men and women in relationships that don't want any input from their partner. They don't want to hear anything about what their partner wants, needs, etc. It's all about them. So those are the two spectrums at the end of the spectrum of codependency. In 2002, we labeled codependency the largest addiction in the world, and by far it is. It blows away all other addictions. It is so insidious that you don't even know you're codependent because you think you're doing nice things. You know, like if you're the martyr and you're always serving, always giving, never thinking about yourself, that's codependency. It sounds beautiful. Serve others, well, it is to a point, but you can take anything that seems good and make it bad. Hey, a glass of red wine might be good for your heart. 6 glasses isn't. Same thing with codependency. No. Same thing with codependency. You know, to be of service to your partner, of course, that should be part of the relationship, but not if you lose yourself in the process. If your partner gets to do anything and everything he or she wants, and you feel like you're a slave to the relationship, you're in a codependent relationship. You know, and how does codependency start? Well, I said it's 0 to 18. So it's usually modeled from either mom or dad or both mom and dad. So let's say you're growing up in a relationship where mom's the enabler. Well, if you're a woman, there's a good chance you're going to follow mom's footsteps.
Right.
Not because
you model yourself after her.
Yeah. Not because it makes sense, but because between 0 and 18, you don't have the logical ability mentally to discriminate, most of us, from what's good behavior or bad behavior between mom and dad. So if you see mom always at dad's feet, what can I do for you? And mom doesn't have a life, then you perceive, well, that's the way that a marriage should be. And if you're a man growing up in that type of relationship, if you're a woman growing up in that, you're going to look for a guy to control you because that's what you saw with mom. If you're a boy growing up in that relationship, you're going to think that women should be of service to you because that's what mom was to dad.
Right.
And we see it, you know, Deborah, this is so huge. Just what we're talking about right now destroys so many relationships. And the foundation of it, once you get out of the house, if you don't change, it's low self-confidence and low self-esteem is what creates a codependent relationship.
Oh my God, David, you're just hitting it right on the nail on the head because that's what we deal with, I think, in the majority of the advice letters that come through this column.
Yeah, well, it's true, you know, because a strong, confident woman wouldn't put up with crap from a boyfriend or a husband. A strong, confident man wouldn't put up with crap from a girlfriend or a wife. And so if you're putting up with nonsense in the relationship, don't look at your partner. Look in the mirror. You're staying. You're putting up with it. You're not doing anything about it. You own the responsibility. And see, the victim would say the opposite. The victim would say, oh, I'm always there and he takes advantage of me or she takes advantage of me. And that's just being a victim. In an unhealthy relationship, you have to do more than just serve your partner. You have to take care of yourself as well.
So someone says, David, most women are trained to be a good wife by catering to our husband's needs.
Unfortunately, it's true. And when I say unfortunately, it's good to, I mean, listen, we have a brand new book called 50 Plus Flavors of Erotic Love. And in that book, I talk about this is how we believe we should be perceiving relationships. The man should worship his partner, and his partner should worship the man. Now, you can do it in different ways, but that's really the ultimate in a relationship. We need to be worshiping our partners. How many people do you know, Deborah, in a healthy relationship that you can see the way they treat each other with respect, worship each other with respect? How many couples do you know?
Maybe 3.
Maybe, right? Like even that hesitation tells us something, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had to count them. Wait, oh no, 4. 4. I'm sorry, there's 4.
4. Okay. So it's very rare that you see couples that respect, worship. You know, I know it's 2021, but why aren't guys opening a door for their girlfriend or wives? Why? Why is that not happening? It should happen, you know? Hey, when we look at what we're doing, this interview right here, this interview is all about waking people up.
Right.
If you want a dynamic relationship and you don't have one, think about doing the opposite of what you're doing right now. But really, and here's something else that's important to say, Deborah. We carry these traits of relationships from one to the next. So if you have a string of 2 or 3 or 8 or 20 or 50 relationships that have all ended poorly, it is you. It's not that you're a bad picker. It's not that there are bad men and bad women. None of that is true. It's you. Because if you had the confidence and self-esteem that's necessary for a healthy relationship, you wouldn't be staying with idiots. You wouldn't be staying with people that are taking advantage of you. You know, so you really, I mean, a lot of the book is going to be powerfully eye-opening for people because it says, let's look in that mirror, baby. Let's take a look. Instead of projecting blame on our partner, what's my role? And when you find the role, you can heal your role. You know, lots of times, Deborah, when I'm working with probably 6 couples right now, just in the last couple months, COVID has unleashed an amazing amount of dysfunction in families.
Oh, hasn't it? It's like it's exposed all the dirt in people's relationships.
That's right. And so if you think you could get away with it up until January of 2020, you could have. But as of February 2020, a year ago, baby, that stress, that being together that much is going to bring up what I said, the very first thing, the resentments we've never taken care of. And now we're going to be seeing dysfunction all over the place. And so what the couples I work with, and I do marriage counseling very differently. In 1996, we quit this nonsense of working with 2 people at the same time. It's the worst marriage counseling advice ever to have a counselor working with both people at the same time. And I'm going to tell you why. What we do is we split them up. We'll do them on Skype. we'll do them in my office. But the reason why in 1996, from 1980 to 1996, when I worked with couples, I would always work with them together on the phone, in my office, whatever it might be. In 1996, I have a couple in my office, and for 50 minutes of the 60-minute session, they sat there arguing. I mean, I couldn't even get a word in. And finally,
Oh my
Deborah,
God.
I did this. I go, okay, wait, time out. I said, hey, let me just wake you guys up. You're paying me really good money to do what you could do at home for free. So I'm not working with couples anymore. You're the last one. If you want to work with me, I'll do it, but I'm going to work with you individually. Do you know from 1996 to today, we have had the most incredible success in saving relationships by doing it this way.
Yeah, I can imagine, because
Yeah,
that would shut down, they would argue and it would shut down free speech, their
that's
freedom,
right.
the feeling of being open and honest and really letting loose with what they really truly feel.
And Deborah, in all relationships, there's a more dominant and a more passive partner. I've never met a relationship where they were both dominant or both passive. I mean, they could happen, but it's rare.
Right.
So when you, in a marriage counseling session, you're going to have a more expressive, more verbal, and a quieter person. Well, the verbal person is going to get all the attention, and the quiet person is going to stay there and not
Right.
say much because they don't want to catch hell on the way home. So if you're in counseling right now and they're doing it marriage counseling, stop it right now. Stop it. Split yourself up. And if you need help, go to my website. We work with people from all over the world, and we can make a difference in your relationship.
I'm going to give them all that information at the end of the interview, David. But let's talk about one of the things I kind of wanted to circle back and touch on this. We were talking about people choosing the wrong person over and over, and that the only thing in common was themselves. Have you run across this, the ideals where they're pushing on women that they need to lower their standards and accept different levels than what they really want or feel is really good for them? And this is a big agenda, especially online, to get women to settle for things that they really don't want to have. And I wanted to ask you, if you run into that, and then how does that play out in the eventual demise of these relationships?
Okay. And that is one of the most insane things I'll have ever heard in my 40 years. That is absolute freaking insanity. You want to talk about resentments building? Oh, this is perfect. This is just great, Deborah. This goes right into my book, right? Let's build resentments. How do you build resentments? I'm going to choose a man that has qualities I don't really care for.
Right.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to enter a relationship, right?
I'm
Hell
telling you, it's
no.
being pushed. It's really being pushed on women to say that, there's not enough single men, available men that want marriage. You have to share men. You have to enter a polygamous relationship. You have to take somebody who's just, a basic guy, even though you might have a master's degree or PhD. What's wrong with having a plumber? And, they want,
Yeah,
it
no,
goes on and on.
oh my God, it's insanity. No, that's just pure insanity. If you're going to settle for less, you're going to suffer for the rest of your life. And here's the thing, and this is codependency. What you're talking about is codependency. I don't feel confident being with a person of my equal. So I will lower my standards so I won't be alone. That's a needy, insecure woman or man. In case I didn't say it correctly, that's a needy, insecure woman or man. Okay, if you're going to lower your standards, get ready for hell on earth, because that's what's coming.
Yeah, I don't think it's not that they're really choosing to, but it's being beat, they're being beat over the head with it.
Yeah, that's craziness. Now, listen, I'm not talking about money here when we talk about
Yeah,
equality.
no.
No, I'm talking about characteristics and personality characteristics. I have a client the other day, and here's the problem, why this is being pushed on women, which I have been irritated about since I began this work. In society, women have been told since the beginning of time that if they don't have a partner, something's wrong with them.
Right.
Men aren't taught that, Deborah. Men aren't taught that if you don't have a girlfriend or wife, there's something wrong with you. It's nowhere near blown up as it is for women. So women get this incredibly insecure teaching that they're not enough on their own. Remember those old statements, I'm looking for my better half? Are you kidding me? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me? Looking for a BS.
My better half is in the mirror. Excuse you.
Hell yeah. You know, it's so true. Like, we don't need someone to fulfill us. Now, if you have patience and you do the work to see how you've screwed up your last relationships and you fix that, how you screwed up your past relationships, you have the best chance of finding someone who's an equal. You really do. And there's plenty of equals out there. But when you have needy women being told that they've got to do whatever it takes to find a man, that's insecure neediness. And when you find a guy, trust me, he's not going to be all that thrilled to be with a needy, insecure woman. Okay.
Well, you are men with confidence, but alas, what we have is guys who want a woman who's easy to control. You know, see, you've been doing this longer than me, but my whole career has been online. I started on AOL in the early 90s. So I've never really done much offline. Everything I've done has been internet based.
Okay.
And so I don't know, just over the years, I've just seen a lot of these guys come at women with crazy conversation. And one of the latest things is to make women feel this anxiety about aging so that they feel like they have to select, just choose whatever guy comes along and just take him and quote work with him because they're getting 30, they're 30 or over. They say women hit the wall when they are 30.
Yeah. And this whole thing is codependency, right? It's like, grab anything, just don't be alone. Grab anyone, just don't be alone. And that message, Deborah, has been handed down for centuries. And it's really sad. I don't follow whatever boards you're following online that are promoting this. You know what? If you're on a board, why don't you put David Essel thinks this is an idiot response and put my website. I don't go online much, but I would love to take these clowns on because this is the type of stuff that stymies personal growth, that destroys self-esteem, that destroys self-confidence. Any woman who's listening to that nonsense is going to really end up in crap relationships once again.
Exactly. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So how do you suggest that women approach a situation where she wants certain behavior changed in her partner, certain actions addressed? She wants some resolution, something, so they both, it's a win-win situation and everything is smoothed over because she doesn't want those resentments. But the guy cannot stand to hear it. He perceives everything that she says to him as a criticism, and he takes it personally and feels attacked, which shuts down. Do you have any tips for how to do that in a way that gets the positive results?
Yeah, we just went over it with a client this morning. And what I asked her to do is to present her husband with the challenges that she's bringing to the marriage that she wants to work on. Now listen to this. So here's an email she sent. Dear hubby, I know that we're separated a little bit in our minds and in our hearts. The marriage isn't as strong as it was a number of years ago. And I see my role in it, which I'm going to list for you right now. Number one. And then she puts her 4 points that she needs to work on to change. And she says, while I work on these points, I would love if we could sit down and talk about a couple things that I would like for you to consider in order to bring us closer together in our relationship. So she doesn't even mention what those things are with him. She doesn't put his back against the wall yet. What she's doing is being humble and vulnerable, saying, I've got these 4 things I want to work on to help our marriage. There's a couple things I'd like to talk about with you that I think if you made some slight changes could really help us too. Could we sit down and talk? That would be the very first way. When you tell a guy or a strong woman that here's 4 things you need to change in a marriage, the very first thing they think is, F you, I'm fine, I don't need to change a thing. So if you go first humbly that I've got some stuff I need to work on, can we talk about some other things that could help save the marriage or strengthen the marriage? You at least open the dialogue. And then when you go to sit down and talk and you share, here's 4 things I need to change. And of course, let's say from a husband's point of view, who goes, man, that's amazing. You're right. If you made those changes, our marriage would be better. And then we say, and honey, I've got to talk to you about Sunday afternoons. I don't see you ever. I know you love hanging with your guys, but I lose you. The children lose you. We never see you from 11 until 7 every Sunday. I'd like to try to figure out some way that you could be with us longer on Sundays. And that, are you open to that discussion? Now, if a guy says, no, I'm not, then that's the time for at least the woman to go into therapy. There's this misconception that says that if both people aren't in therapy, you can't save a marriage. And that is absolutely incorrect. If one person comes in, it's amazing what they can do to potentially help heal their relationship, even if just one is doing the work.
Okay, so you're getting a compliment in the chat, and there someone has typed that what a great approach to resolving a conflict.
Yeah. You know, like, listen, conflicts are tough, you know, and the codependent avoids these conversations. Like the codependent will avoid. I worked with a woman last year who was married for 49 years. And 48 of the years when she called me, she was fully codependent. Now listen to this. The very first date that she went on, which was the biggest red flag in the world, but she needed a guy. She was in college. She needed a boyfriend. She finds a guy. He takes her to a party. He asks her to sit in the living room, and he disappeared for 4 hours. She didn't know anyone at the party. He was gone somewhere. 4 hours later, he comes back and says, okay, let's go. She decided against her better instincts to marry him. And the whole 48 years was him not being emotionally engaged in the marriage, just like their very first date. If you don't pay attention to the first 90 days of dating, you're screwed, because everyone puts all their cards out on the table in 90 days. I promise you.
Right.
You know, it's not, that's it. It's a quick 90 days. But if you're paying attention, you can see the red flags, you can see the inconsistencies, and you can bring them up then. Don't wait any longer. And here's something else I want to mention that we talk about in the book, Deborah. Every individual I've worked with that has said, David, he changed after 30 years. I always get a little smile and say, so he was awesome for 30 years. And they go, oh my God, he was incredible. And then what happens is what happened with the client I just mentioned. I said, well, let's go back and look at the first couple months of dating. And every time, Deborah, they go, oh my God. Oh my.
Yeah, they don't see it because their eyes are, what do they say? It's a pink rose colored glasses.
Yeah, rose colored glasses.
Right.
Well, you know, let's be honest. It's lust. It's desire,
well, yeah,
which is fine. But then there's codependency when you're not willing to look at the signs.
Well, let's talk about fear. I want to talk about fear because I wanted to get your take on what you think, what role fear has in our romantic relationships with our partner choices and behaviors.
You know, that's an interesting question. I think people, when we talk about women, their greatest fear is being alone. And we talk about men, their greatest fear is being in a relationship where they're nagged.
Being nagged?
Being nagged. And you know what? If you read my book, you're going to see the difference between a healthy way to communicate and nagging. So when all you do is set boundaries and you say, you know, if you ever do that again, I'm losing or leaving. If you do that, I'm out of here. You know, all you're doing is nagging. All that is nagging. That's not setting boundaries. That's all that is nagging. You know, if you do this one more time, you know, every time you go out, you do this. I don't ever want you doing it. That's just nagging. So what you have to do is say this. You have to say, hey, when you go out with your friends on Friday nights and you come home and you're drunk, and then the next day, Saturday, you're not available for me and the kids till noon, that's just not acceptable. So what I'd like you to do, I will support you in getting help with your drinking problem. If you choose not to, we are going to separate for 90 days. And at the end of 90 days, I'm going to be working with a counselor. I advise you to work with a counselor. At the end of 90 days, if we can keep it together and you can get sober, fantastic, we'll stay together. If not, we will dissolve the relationship or go through divorce. I encourage people to do this all the time. If two people are working with separate counselors in a 90-day separation, we have saved so many relationships, Deborah. But the nagging has got to end. You can't keep saying, if you do this, if you do that, there's got to be a consequence. So the consequence is, if you do this, here's the end result. Now it's up to you. You want to be a big boy and get help and quit drinking? We can stay together. You want to be a little boy and you want to be self-centered and go for your instant gratification of your drinking or drugs or whatever it is, or chasing women or online porn or whatever the freaking stuff is. There's got to be a consequence to the boundary or you're just nagging.
I think a lot of women they struggle with that because they know what they don't want and they can communicate that well. But when it comes to actually going through with what they said was going to be the repercussion, they get scared and then they back down because they really do want the relationship. So they just be quiet. But then of course they're still resentful, as you said. So it keeps coming up, coming up, coming up.
And Deborah, you know what we see in these relationships? We see men and women repeating the same cycle, different faces, different bodies, same end result. Different faces, different bodies, same end result. And then we go, it's the men. Men are all dogs. Women just want to be taken care of financially. You know, we have all these freaking statements. Instead of going, what the hell is my role? You know, there was a great poster on the internet in 1996. I have no idea if it's still up somewhere. But they were saying that what the poster said was the only common denominator in all of your failed relationships is you.
Yeah.
And I love that, you know, because it says take ownership. And here's something for all of our viewers and listeners. If you're single, stay single until you've released every resentment against a former lover or your mother or father. Because if you have issues, like I train all of my female clients when they're dating, I want you in the first 30 days to find out what the relationship of this guy is with his mother and his father. It's crucial for women to know this. If you're dating a guy that hates his mother, has never resolution. Now, there's a difference between resolution and hate. If a guy has resolved that he doesn't want his mother in his life, and he's come to the conclusion that it's the right thing for him, and he holds no anger against his mother. He just says, you know, she's not healthy for me. I've gone through too much. That's an okay guy. But if you're dating a guy that can't stand his mother, can't stand his father, you're in trouble. And it's the same thing for men. If guys are dating women that have huge father issues, you're in trouble. You've got to get them to go and get work and to heal their issues of either their mother or their father, or I wouldn't date them, because that is a problem. That's going to be a huge problem down the line.
Well, this is definitely something to consider because of the high number of single parent homes in our society as of late. And a lot of the, young adults grew up without any father at all, or they grew up in foster homes, or their grandparents raised them, or their parents were addicted and they pretty much raised themselves.
Yeah.
How do we factor in those kinds of issues? Do those people need to be getting counseling as well?
Absolutely. Well, you know what, Deborah, I need counseling, for God's sake. We all need it. You know, literally, if you want to be honest, I mean, every human being needs someone to vent to, needs a mentor, a counselor, a therapist, a coach. I mean, everyone does. And so let's say you come from, a background that's very sketchy. Maybe you were in a foster home. Maybe your grandparents raised you. Maybe you had an alcoholic family and you had no father and no mother, whatever it might be. Stop dating. Stop. Get help. Look.
Are you ladies listening to this?
Yeah,
you're running into those kinds of dudes. Are you listening to David right now?
Absolutely. You got to stop dating and you got to work with a professional. And, there are churches that'll do scale work, like whatever you can afford, they'll do. There's organizations. I mean, you can go to temples, synagogues, churches, spiritual centers that will, if you don't have a lot of money, that will help you out. If you have enough money, hire a professional. But the key is for you to express how you grew up, what your opinion is of men and women. A lot of people go into the world of dating, Deborah, with crap opinions about men. And it's like, if you're going in jaded, you're coming out with an idiot because you can't date if you're jaded. You just can't, stay on the sidelines, get help, get even, let go of your resentments against men or women, and then enter the force.
I'm with you. I can see, let me see. I'm going to scan the chat room over here. Someone says that they would recommend avoiding religious counseling because for a lot of them, they're just reinforcing biblical messages and not really helping, resolve the issue.
Well, and
Hmm.
in that case, what I would say is find a different church. If you have a religion and you believe in, some type of religious practice,
Right.
and you go to one and you don't connect with the priest or the minister or whatever it is, just go to a different one. Don't give up on it. Now, if you're non-religious, I wouldn't advise going to a temple, a synagogue, or a church. If you have
Right.
no belief in God or you don't like religion, well, then don't go to a place you don't like for help, right? But if you are religious, then find the right church or minister to help you, because there's good ministers out there.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about, let's go on and move into mother-daughter relationships. And I have to ask you this because it's came up twice in the last couple of weeks, where a young lady, a young adult, 21, 22 years old, raised by only your mother, only child. That was the case in all three of these young women's lives. Their mothers were like globbing onto them and wouldn't what they had to be home early in the evening, like 6 o'clock in one case, couldn't go anywhere with their friends, no parties, no clubs. It was just, and didn't want them to have a job so they wouldn't be financially independent. It was the most bizarre series of letters. And I wanted to ask you what you thought was going on there. What is that dynamic between with a mother who would try to put her own child in a choke chain like that?
Yeah. So it's called an enmeshed daughter mother relationship. One of
Oh,
the
it has a
worst.
name.
It has a name. It's one of the worst codependent forms of relationships that you could ever have. And I can tell you two quick stories. One, a number of years ago, a woman from Texas called me. Her mom lived 2 hours away and she guilted her. This is an adult woman. For 20 years, every Wednesday, her mom was 2 hours away and she would call her and say, I have no milk. You must come this weekend. I'm not feeling good. You must come this weekend. And she would come up with some excuse, and the daughter bought into the guilt. For 20 years, the mother ran the daughter's life. Now, this woman was 40 when she contacted me. Okay. So from 20 to 40, she had been driving every freaking weekend to spend it with her mom, who was lonely, who was alone, that didn't have milk, or whatever other BS excuse she came up with. So she called me and we were working together, and she said, David, I have no idea how to get out of this. So I took her through the steps. She slowly pulled away. She said, Mom, I can come this Saturday night. I can't come Friday night. And then the next weekend, Mom, I can come Sunday morning. I can't come Saturday. Then the next weekend, Mom, I can't make it this weekend, but I'll be there the next one. So she weaned herself off because the addiction is so strong. The woman felt so guilty that she said, David, I just can't stop going. So we set up a plan of action.
Wow.
And that's what you have to do. Another story is a client of mine. Her mom was an accountant, and she told her little daughter, starting at the age of 6, that she was stupid, ignorant. She couldn't understand math. She would never amount to anything in life. At 9, in ninth grade, this daughter dropped out of high school, never returned to get her GED. At 18 years of age, she found a trade that she absolutely fell in love with as a hairstylist. That was at 18. At 20, she was making $150,000 a year, much more than her mother. And her mother immediately came in and said, I'll run the books. I'll do the banking. And because she was in an enmeshed relationship with her mother, they were extremely unhealthy, codependent. She said, okay. She didn't want to disappoint her mother. 20 years later, once again, from 20 to 40, at 40, this woman contacts me. And it's just mind blowing. The mother had wrecked her entire life. The woman let her wreck it, though. I'm not going to just blame the mom, right? Hey, listen, at 20, you may not have the skills. At 30, you better have the skills.
Right.
And so she waited till she was 40. But here's the sad news. The first client I told you about, Deborah, totally healed and shattered the enmeshed relationship with her mom and went on to find a great guy, get married, has a wonderful life. Unfortunately, the second one I'm telling you about still is in the enmeshed state, and now she's 50.
And now she's probably broke too because her mother took her money.
Absolutely. You're
That's
right.
terrible.
Yep.
Let's talk about there's this quote that I saw. You reminded us of the quote. There's only one common denominator in all of our failed relationships, and that is us. Now, what we have to do, because you're making a lot of really good points, but how do we start reprogramming our minds? What if people can't afford therapy and
Okay.
they're not religious? Or do you have any tips? I mean, what can we do to kind of help ourselves?
Okay. Number one, take a year off from dating. You need time off. You need time down. Quit looking. Get off of all the dating sites. Quit telling your friends, if I only had a man, if I only had a guy to go out to dinner with, if I only had blah, 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 knock it off. Number two, go to YouTube, Google David Essel. We have 2,000 videos on personal growth. Just go to YouTube, Google David Essel relationships. You will find probably 200 videos that I've done on relationships for free. It's on YouTube. So if you don't have the money, first of all, get the hell out of relationships, decide to be single for at least a year, and go live on my channel. Just watch a video every day, because we can do some self-education, Deborah, but it's really tough to do it and to change when you're always dating someone. You
Right.
need the space to practice self-confidence and self-esteem.
Gotcha. Because seems like it would be, so you already have a base problems of relating, and then you're adding new problems because you keep trying to be in a relationship.
That's right. And in the book, we talk about something very unique, the definition of what intimacy is. And our definition is very different than any other definition that you'll see. In the book, we say this: pure intimacy in a relationship is 110% honesty between both partners. Period. You can't
that's so hard.
Yep.
That is so hard.
It is. You cannot get more intimate than being 110% honest. Now you're raw, you're vulnerable, you're open, and that's where love sits. Love does not sit in comfort. Love sits in vulnerability and openness. And when you can sit with your partner and talk about things that are uncomfortable, you have a deep, intimate relationship. And Deborah, I wish more people had it. When we talk about 80% of relationships in our country suck, they're dysfunctional, it's because people are so afraid of intimacy. I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about being honest, being open.
It's very high risky, and I think it's high risk because I think by the time you've been out here dating, in this world of dating apps, so many people are game players and not really trustworthy individuals.
That's
and
right.
so, you kind of put up a wall to, shield yourself from that nonsense until you see if they're a sane person or not. And then by the time you do, though, you've probably already suffered some new damage. And so you take that with you to the next one. I can see where not dating would be a good thing to do.
Yeah. In 1997, I went through a year of training on codependency, and the therapist, we decided that I was going to help her as a therapist with her issues. And she said, and I'll help yours. And I said, fine, I don't have any, but let's do some work. Pretty funny, right? So within 4 weeks, she stopped everything and she puts her pen down and goes, David Essel, I've got to tell you the truth. You are the most codependent man in intimate relationships I have ever met, ever.
Oh, no.
And I looked at her and I said, what are you talking about? I've been a counselor for all these years. I do all this kind of stuff. And she said, you are the white knight. Every relationship you've told me about, you're saving women from something. They don't have the money. They don't have the parenting skills, and you have great parenting skills. They don't know how to handle their ex-husband, so you're going to come and rescue them. Their mother or father's an idiot. You're going to come and rescue them. And all of a sudden, Deborah, my eyes blew up because she was right. See, I was doing it to make myself feel better. So if I could bring someone in and lift them up, then I was the hero. But there's a catch when you're doing hero work, whether you're a guy or a woman. Women do the same crap, man. Women
they want to save everybody.
Oh, he doesn't know what it's like to be loved. When he's with me, he'll finally be loved. All this BS nonsense, right? And so she woke me up, and I was celibate for 2 years. So at the end of that, I stayed celibate the whole year of the training. And then I decided to do one more year. From that time, 1997 until today, 2021, I have had one partial codependent relationship that I ended in 30 days
Oh, good
because
for you.
I saw it coming, but I was a sucker at first because I wanted to save her. And then at the end of 30 days, I was doing some journaling and I looked at it and I go, you're codependent again.
In the Black community, David, we call that being a captain.
A
It's got
captain.
a Captain Save a Hoe. That's the real, that's the full name. But, it's just been abbreviated down to captain. But that is essentially what it is. Everything that you mentioned falls
Yep.
under that name of being a captain.
Well, I learned a ton, and I never would have known that she could call me out so brilliantly, and she did. And it was an unbelievable experience, and it changed me forever.
Well, let's talk about any kind of affirmations that you might be able to suggest that women start doing to kind of start reprogramming their thinking.
I think the biggest ones are about worthiness. I'm worthy of being loved. I'm worthy about being respected. I'm worthy with being a man that cares for me. Or a woman, whatever your sexual preference is. I'm worthy of being with someone who will assist me, who will support me. And I don't just mean financially. I'm willing. And I think that's really where it's at, Deborah, is affirmations about worth. Our self-worth is going to define the type of person that we stay with, not the type of person we attract. We may still attract some goofballs, but if we stay with them, that's the low self-worth. So if you're going to do affirmation work, I would do, I am worthy of being loved. I am worthy of loving. I am worthy of being someone who can communicate. I am worthy of being a good communicator. I would stay with worthiness affirmations all day long.
Oh, that's a good idea. Someone has a question here and says, what if you don't save others, but you want to be saved and you attract people who aren't interested in saving you?
Save yourself. Don't look for people to save you. That would be, and this is something that's indoctrinated in society with a lot of women, and it comes from childhood fairy tales, for God's sake, the White Knight, David Essel, 1997, riding in on his steed, like we got to save ourselves. There's no one else that's going to save us. And if you're looking to be supported, there's a big surprise coming down the road. You're going to be asked to do things that you don't want to do. If you want a guy to support you or a woman to support you, get ready, gang, because they're going to come back and they'll be all cheery in the beginning. And then they're going to start demanding of you things. And you may not be comfortable, but you created the situation. They did not. You created it.
I warned them about that because there's a big contingent of female YouTubers that push that agenda that women should have, these men that come in and take over and support them, and the women just don't really do anything, and they, the guys are the main breadwinners and all this stuff. And I'm like, that might be really nice, and if he can afford to do that, he does it willingly. That's really great. But it still causes what you said. You got to pay for everything you get in this world. My
Amen.
dad used to say, either you pay now or you pay later, but you always pay. And
That's right.
he used to say, ain't free in this world. And that was what he said. And I grew up hearing that. So I would never expect to get anything like that without knowing it's going to swing around and bite me in the butt on the other side.
And Deborah, let's look at the truth. Let's say that you're a woman and you want a guy to rescue you and pay for things, and you don't want to work. You want to be at the spa, or you want to be at the gym, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. You are pretty much now worthless. You're worthless. What are you bringing to the table besides sex? What kind of conversation can you have if you don't have passion, volunteer, if you don't have a career? What are you bringing to the table? What are you going to do? Sit at the table, make him dinner because that's what he's paying you to do, and then have sex with him because he's paying you to do that. But what are you bringing? Where's your joy? Where's your passion? How are you contributing to this world? This world needs help, man. And if you're going to be if you're going to be a lazy ass and sit around looking for someone to support you, you're part of the problem. And I know some people will be pissed off at me, but you know what, Deborah, there's always people pissed off at me, so I don't really care. But if you're going to be part of the problem, accept it. And if your man who's supporting you starts to demand that you do threesomes or demand that you do something else that you don't want to do, you've created it.
Absolutely. Well, I want to let you have the opportunity to share what you might call takeaways. What would you like the audience to focus on? I don't know, say the top three things
Okay,
from your presentation.
fantastic. Number one, look in the mirror if you're in a relationship that's unhealthy and figure out what your role is. It's the most important thing. It's humbling, it makes you vulnerable. That would be number one. Number two, if you're single, get off of all sites of dating. Don't date for a year, like I've been saying. Get help to see, why have my past relationships failed. A lot of people will say, David, it's got to be the guys or it's got to be the women because they're all different. You know, I dated a painter and I dated a musician and I dated a banker. And so, see, I'm dating all different types of people, but in general, they're dating the same guy. It doesn't matter. Different face, different body, same characteristics. So take time off to learn about the mistakes you've made in the past. And then number three is what we were just talking about. Before you date anyone else, make sure you love yourself, you respect yourself, you respect your body, you respect your mind, your spirit, and your soul. Make sure you're in love with yourself. The only time you should date is when you're really happy single. When you're happy single, you're in the best place to see red flags. You're not needy. You are a powerful woman who desires and deserves to be worshiped and loved, just like you need to worship and love your partner. Wait, fall in love with yourself, and then get ready for the relationship of a lifetime, Deborah.
Oh, that's so excellent. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Now let everybody know where they can I am going to put all of this into the
Mm-hmm.
the chat show description below, but I would still like it to be on the auditory part because we have some people that they can't read, they just are listening while they're
Okay.
driving or something. So please share where they can find you.
Absolutely. It's very simple. The website is talkdavid.com, Deborah, because that's all I do all day is talk. Talkdavid.com. I've been doing it for years. We're going to keep doing it. When you go to Talk David, you'll see free things. There's a blog with 400 articles you can read. You can look at all the books we have, the courses. We work with people from all over the world via phone and Skype. We have for years. We're still going to continue to do it. And if you're interested, if you're going, oh, this is piquing my interest, you can grab the book, Love and Relationship Secrets, at Amazon.com. It's Audible, Kindle, and softcover. You can work with me one-on-one from anywhere, and we can make huge inroads. When you see the endorsements on our website from people like Dr. Wayne Dyer, Jenny McCarthy, oh my God, she blew up one of our books. I was on her show 5 times, Deborah. She put me on the map. 5 years ago, it was amazing. So go to the website, talkdavid.com, pick up the energy, the vibe. And if you want some help, I will do it with you.
You've been the best, David. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Deborah. I've loved being with you. I appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you right back. Okay. Talk to you later.
Bye now.
Okay, everybody. That was David Essel, he was our very first guest for February 2021. I want to thank everybody for coming in and showing their support. And this is just the first. Remember, this is just the first. We got 27 more days of powerful speakers like this. We're going to close out February with a panel discussion. So it's on the channel wall. If you have a question that you would like to submit in advance for the panelists to discuss. I'm going to have a 2-hour panel discussion with 6 women plus me. So you know that we need some time because we have a whole bunch of talking going on. We have some fabulous guests coming up tomorrow. We'll be doing What the Fuck Tuesday as usual. But on Wednesday, Fred Golder will be talking about how to resolve conflicts in your relationship and do it in a way that doesn't sacrifice your self-respect and your self-confidence and self-esteem. And then Kim Oliver is going to be talking about on a live stream on Thursday, how to make time for yourself, and you're taking care of everybody else and you guys aren't loving yourselves. You're sacrificing too much. So she's going to be here to talk to you about how to do that. And Bonita Owens is coming on Saturday, and she's going to get down and just tell you all about saying no and setting boundaries. So that will close out our first week of February. See the calendar on the community wall. It's on a post. Click it. You can print it out. I set it up so anybody with the link can access the calendar on my Google account. You can print it out. And if there's guests that you think are particularly interesting to you, be sure to transfer that information over to your calendar on your phone. Okay. So you'll get a notice. If you're not a subscriber to this channel, please become one. We would certainly appreciate that. And hit that like button on your way out. Thank you everybody for coming. We got a lot of great stuff coming up for you, and I hope you're here every single day of February 2021. I'll see you real soon.